Over the last few weeks, since late September, Bitcoin has really rallied by over 57%. Can this rally continue, and how high can Bitcoin go? Let's talk about that. Welcome to myfinancesteacher.org. And as you see from this post, on the 20th of September and on the 22nd of September, we entered into long positions on Bitcoin, pretty close to that cycle low that was on the 20th of September and on 22nd of September. That's actually one day before and one day after that cycle low. That was pretty good timing, somewhat lucky perhaps, but at the moment Bitcoin is getting somewhat hot. And before looking at the technicals, I want to first have a look at some of the interesting news that's been coming up about Bitcoin. Remember back in December 2017, in the early part of December, we had CBOE futures on Bitcoin coming up. And a little bit later, in the later part of that same December in 2017, we had a larger CME futures coming up as well. And what do you know? That was the exact top for that longer term 4-year cycle on Bitcoin, where Bitcoin topped around $20,000 and continued to go lower for over a year, all the way down to about $3,000. Well, fast forward to today, and what do you know? We see a news coming up a couple of days ago on Bloomberg, where SEC is expected to allow an ETF on Bitcoin futures. That perhaps would allow some of the more conservative investors, some of the more conservative traders who don't want to dabble with the futures, who don't want to set up their own wallet to buy their own cryptocurrencies. This sort of ETF might perhaps allow these sort of traders to get some crypto-related positions through an ETF, through a simple stockbroker. Believe it or not, whether this will actually happen or not doesn't really matter that much at the moment, as the hype is in expectation of this sort of possible turn of events. Perhaps traders are piling into Bitcoin. That means there is a bit of a chance for a buy the rumor, sell the news event maybe happening over the next 1 or 2 weeks. By the way, ETF is launching tomorrow, this Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. So having entered into a crypto trade on the 20th and on the 22nd of September with the members at myfinancesteacher.org, we have actually reduced our position a little bit after a bit of a run up, but perhaps sometime soon I'm going to reduce that position further down, to at least based on this fundamental news coming up. Next, let's have a look at the technicals. If you zoom out a little bit on the Bitcoin chart, let me switch to a log chart, you will notice that Bitcoin often follows these cycles that usually last for around a couple of months. Of course, sometimes they can stretch, sometimes they can be pretty short as well, but around a couple of months is the usual duration, meaning that after about a month of a rally or so, traders perhaps should be a little bit cautious and maybe reducing their position, reducing the long side of the positions could be a good idea. Now, looking at the ongoing cycle is now 27 days old, so we are pretty close, I would say, to the midpoint of the cycle. But of course, it doesn't have to be the case that the midpoint of the cycle is actually the top of the cycle. Perhaps the midpoint of the cycle comes over the next several days, but Bitcoin price might continue higher, leaving a shorter time to decline into that cycle low before the next cycle starts with a new rally. But nevertheless, I think caution is advised when Bitcoin is approaching this previous all-time high. That's pretty close to $65,000. Currently, the price of Bitcoin is at $62,400, and that previous all-time high might actually turn out to be a strong resistance, at least for this ongoing 2-month cycle in Bitcoin. Perhaps the next cycle can break above that previous all-time high, but I would expect some resistance, at least temporarily. Next, looking at the 14-day RSI, currently it's at nearly 74. Of course, RSI can still go much higher, and there are cases when Bitcoin cycle didn't top until RSI topped anywhere from 84 to 88. So we might still see potentially much higher RSI levels, but nevertheless, it is into overbought area right now, and a bit of caution is perhaps advised over here. Another potential technical sign that might be coming up over the next few days is poking above pretty wide Bollinger Bands. If the continuation of the ongoing rally is not very explosive, there is a chance that the Bollinger Bands might narrow a little bit, or at least not become much wider than they are. And in the meantime, if price continues rising gradually towards that all-time high resistance at around $65,000, we will see another repeated poke above relatively wide Bollinger Bands, which again often indicates that some sort of a caution is advised. Next, looking at this crypto fear and greed index, it's clear that the markets are now experiencing extreme greed, with this fear and greed index at around 78 and even as high as 79 yesterday. So pretty much everyone might be on board already, meaning that, while rally might still continue for a while, there aren't much money left on the sidelines to get into cryptos before a bit of a cool down is expected. Now, looking at the history of this fear and greed index, let's have a look at 1 year history. We'll see that often peaks take place anywhere from around 80 to that level of 90. And again, right now, this fear and greed index is already getting close to that level of 80. Again, it might still continue even higher towards that level of 90, but we aren't that far from a local top, in my opinion. So I will see how things develop over the next 1 or 2 days, and will post my updated views for the members at myfinanceteacher.org. For now, let me leave you with this question. Do you think that all-time high at $65,000 is going to be breached this week? Or is Bitcoin going to bounce back to, say, $56,000? Let me know what you think in the comments below. For now, I wish you a productive Monday and good luck in your trades.